Help us reach 1,000 subscribers on our new channel, Cheating Tales Lab. We hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. Spencer Durham woke up at 5 a.m., as he always did. He reached for his phone, his fingers tapping out his passcode by muscle memory. He had a text from his wife, Kristen. "Miss you, babe. Can't wait to see you tonight." Spencer smiled. After 12 years of marriage, Kristen still made his heart skip a beat. He typed out a quick reply, then headed for the shower. As the hot water cascaded over his body, he thought about surprising Kristen with dinner reservations at Le Petit Bistro, her favorite French restaurant. The day flew by in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Spencer's company, Durham Tech, was on the verge of a breakthrough in quantum computing. If successful, it would revolutionize the tech industry and solidify Durham Tech's position as a market leader. As he drove home, Spencer's mind drifted to the future. He and Kristen had been talking about starting a family. Maybe tonight would be the night they'd decide to try. He pulled into the driveway of their craftsman-style home, noticing with surprise that Kristen's car was already there. She usually worked late on Thursdays. Spencer entered quietly, intending to surprise her. He heard Kristen's voice coming from the study, laughter in her tone. She must be on the phone. "I can't wait to see you either," Kristen was saying. "Spencer's out of town until tomorrow. We'll have the whole night to ourselves." Spencer froze, his hand on the doorknob. This couldn't be happening. There had to be some explanation. "I've got something special planned," Kristen continued, her voice dropping to a sultry whisper. "Remember that little red number you like so much?" Spencer's vision blurred. He pushed open the door, startling Kristen. She whirled around, her face draining of color as she saw him. "Spencer," she gasped, "you're home early." Spencer's voice was ice. "Clearly." Kristen's eyes darted to her phone, then back to Spencer. "It's not what you think." "Really?" Spencer's laugh was bitter. "Because I think you're planning to fuck someone else in our bed tonight." Kristen's demeanor changed, defiance replacing shock. "Fine. You want the truth? I'm going on a date tonight, with someone who actually pays attention to me." Spencer felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "What are you talking about? We'd been married for 12 years. Kristen's laugh was cruel. "And for the last 5, you've been married to your company. I'm done playing second fiddle to Durham Tech. So, instead of talking to me, you decide to cheat?" "Oh, grow up, Spencer," Kristen sneered. "This isn't some fairy tale. People change. Feelings change. I've changed." Spencer struggled to process what was happening. "Who is he?" Kristen's smile was vicious. "Someone who knows how to treat a woman. Someone who isn't afraid of success." The implication hit Spencer like a physical blow. "It's Scott Cahill, isn't it? My competitor?" Kristen's silence was answer enough. Spencer's mind raced. Scott Cahill, CEO of Cahill Tech, had been making aggressive moves in the market lately. And now this. "How long?" Kristen shrugged. "Long enough to know he's a better man than you'll ever be." "Get out," Spencer said, his voice deadly quiet. "Gladly," Kristen replied. "Oh, and Spencer? I'll be taking half of everything in the divorce. Enjoy your precious company while you still have it." She brushed past him, the scent of her perfume, the perfume he'd bought her for their anniversary, making his stomach turn. Spencer stood in the empty study, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He needed air. He needed space. He needed revenge. He stumbled out of the house, barely aware of where he was going. His feet carried him to the park where he and Kristen had their first date. He collapsed onto a bench, his mind reeling. How had he not seen this coming? Had he really been so blind, so focused on his work that he'd driven Kristen into another man's arms? No. Spencer's jaw clenched. This wasn't his fault. Kristen had made a choice. She could have talked to him, could have told him she was unhappy. Instead, she'd chosen to betray him in the worst possible way. And with Scott Cahill, of all people, the man who'd been trying to undermine Durham Tech at every turn. Was this just about hurting Spencer, or was there more to it? Spencer pulled out his phone, his fingers shaking slightly as he dialed a number. Ricardo? It's Spencer Durham. I need your services. Discreetly. Ricardo Finn was the best private investigator in the city. If anyone could get to the bottom of this, it was him. I'll text you the details, Spencer said. I want to know everything. Who, what, when, where, and I want to know what, if anything, this has to do with my company. He ended the call, feeling a cold determination settle over him. Kristen thought she could take half of everything. She had no idea what was coming. Spencer spent the next week in a haze of work and sleepless nights. He threw himself into Durham Tech, pushing the quantum computing project forward with a ferocity that both impressed and worried his team. Kristen tried to call several times. Spencer let it go to voicemail. She could wait until he had all the facts. Finally, Ricardo called. I have what you need, he said. My office. 1 hour. Spencer arrived at Ricardo's office exactly 60 minutes later. The PI's office was dim, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. Ricardo gestured for Spencer to sit. It's not good, he said without preamble. Spencer's stomach clenched. Tell me. Ricardo slid a folder across the desk. Kristen's been having an affair with Scott Cahill for the past 8 months. Spencer opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos showing Kristen entering Scott's office building late at night, leaving early in the morning, her hair mussed, wearing the same clothes as the night before. There's more, Ricardo said. He pushed another folder toward Spencer. Financial records. Large sums of money being transferred from Kristen's personal account to offshore holdings linked to Scott. Spencer's mind raced. The timing coincided with several unexplained leaks of sensitive information from Durham Tech, information that had given Cahill Tech a significant advantage in recent months. She's been selling me out, Spencer said, his voice hollow. Ricardo nodded. It looks that way. Spencer leaned back in his chair, his mind whirling. This wasn't just about an affair. This was corporate espionage. This was an attempt to destroy everything he built. What do you want to do? Ricardo asked. Spencer's eyes hardened. I want to destroy them both. Ricardo raised an eyebrow. That could get messy. I don't care, Spencer said. They try to take everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from them. Ricardo nodded slowly. I'll need more time, more resources. You'll have whatever you need, Spencer said. I want every skeleton in their closets, every dirty secret, every weakness. As he left Ricardo's office, Spencer felt a strange calm settle over him. The pain and betrayal were still there, but they were overshadowed by a cold, implacable anger. Kristen and Scott thought they could play him for a fool. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Spencer's first stop was Durham Tech. He needed to secure his company against further attacks. He called an emergency meeting with his most trusted employee and friend, Danny Donnelly, the CFO. We've been compromised, Spencer said without preamble as Danny entered his office. Danny's eyes widened. How bad? Bad, Spencer replied. He filled Danny in on Kristen's betrayal and the corporate espionage. Danny whistled low. Jesus, Spence. I'm so sorry. Spencer waved away the sympathy. I need your help, Danny. We need to protect the company. Danny nodded. All business now. What do you need? I want to create a series of shell companies, Spencer said. We'll use them to obscure ownership of our key patents and technologies. Danny frowned. That's risky, Spence. If the SEC gets wind of it, it's riskier to do nothing. Spencer cut him off. Cahill Tech is coming for us. We need to be prepared. Danny nodded slowly. Okay, what else? I want to transfer a significant portion of our liquid assets to secure offshore accounts, Spencer continued. And we need new security protocols. Nothing leaves this building without triple verification. Danny's eyebrows shot up. You're really going to war, aren't you? Spencer's smile was grim. They started this war, Danny. I'm just making sure we finish it. As Danny left to set things in motion, Spencer turned to his computer. He had one more card to play. He pulled up his email and composed a message to Abby, Kristen's estranged sister. They hadn't spoken in years. Not since Kristen had manipulated their father into cutting Abby out of his will. "Abby," he wrote, "I know it's been a long time, and I'm sorry to reach out like this, but I need to talk to you. It's about Kristen. Please meet me at the Bluebird Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll explain everything." He hit send, then leaned back in his chair. Abby was a wild card, but if she was willing to help, she could be a powerful ally. The next day, Spencer arrived at the Bluebird Cafe early. He chose a quiet booth in the back, his eyes on the door. Abby walked in at exactly 2 p.m. Her eyes scanned the cafe, landing on Spencer. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over. "Spencer," she said, sliding into the booth. "It's been a while." Spencer nodded. "Thank you for coming, Abby." Abby's eyes narrowed. "What's this about, Spencer? Your message was pretty cryptic." Spencer took a deep breath. "It's about Kristen. She's been having an affair." Abby's eyebrows shot up. "Wow. Can't say I'm entirely surprised. Who's the guy?" "Scott Cahill, my main competitor." Abby let out a low whistle. "Damn, Kristen always did know how to pick him." Spencer leaned forward. "There's more. She's been feeding him information about my company, helping him try to take me down." Abby's face hardened. "That bitch," she muttered, "always looking out for number one." "I need your help, Abby," Spencer said. "I need to know everything about Kristen's past, everything she's tried to hide." Abby studied him for a long moment. "You're going to war with her, aren't you?" Spencer nodded. "She tried to destroy everything I built. I'm not going to let her get away with it." A slow smile spread across Abby's face. Well, looks like my dear sister has finally bitten off more than she can chew." She leaned forward. "All right, Spencer. I'm in. What do you want to know?" For the next hour, Abby filled Spencer in on Kristen's past. The college professor she'd seduced for better grades. The first boss she'd manipulated into giving her promotions. The string of wealthy boyfriends she'd used and discarded. Kristen's always been good at using people, Abby concluded, but she's never faced anyone willing to fight back. Until now. Spencer nodded slowly. "Thank you, Abby. This helps more than you know." As they parted ways, Abby caught Spencer's arm. "Make her pay, Spencer. For both of us." Spencer's smile was cold. "Oh, I intend to." As he walked back to his car, Spencer's mind was racing. He had the pieces now. The shell companies to protect Durham Tech, the offshore accounts to secure his assets. And now, thanks to Abby, a clearer picture of who he was really dealing with. Kristen thought she was so clever. She thought she could manipulate him, use him, and then discard him when something better came along. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Spencer pulled out his phone and dialed Ricardo. "I've got more information," he said when the PI answered. "I want to move to the next phase. It's time to start applying pressure." Ricardo asked, "This might get messy." Spencer's voice was steel. "They want a war? Let's give them one." As he hung up, Spencer felt a cold satisfaction settle over him. Kristen and Scott had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. The game was on, and Spencer intended to win, no matter the cost. Spencer Durham stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city below. 2 weeks had passed since his meeting with Abby. 2 weeks of meticulous planning, of setting the stage for what was to come. His phone buzzed. A text from Ricardo. "It's happening. Cahill Tech just made their move." Spencer allowed himself a cold smile. Right on schedule. He turned to his computer, pulling up the live stock ticker. Cahill Tech was aggressively buying up Durham Tech stock, causing a stir in the tech world. Message boards were lighting up with speculation. The financial news networks were already running breaking news banners. Spencer picked up his phone, dialing Danny. "It's time," he said when the CFO answered. "Release the reports." Within the hour, Durham Tech released a series of financial reports that painted a bleak picture of the company's future. Projected earnings were down. R&D costs were up. The quantum computing project was facing unforeseen obstacles. The effect was immediate. Durham Tech's stock price began to fall. Spencer watched the numbers tick down, feeling a satisfaction. He could almost picture Scott Cahill's face, the smug bastard thinking he had Spencer on the ropes. His phone rang again. This time, it was John Turner, the mole Spencer had planted in Cahill Tech's upper management. "Scott's calling an emergency board meeting," John reported. "He's pushing hard for this takeover." "Good," Spencer said. "Keep feeding him the information we discussed. Make him think he's got us cornered." As he hung up, Spencer allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of Kristen, wondered if she was watching this unfold. Did she feel a twinge of regret? Or was she too busy planning how to spend her half of Cahill Tech's soon-to-be inflated stock value? The thought hardened his resolve. He picked up his phone again, this time calling his PR team. "Start the rumor mill," he instructed. "I want whispers about a revolutionary new product in every tech blog and forum by end of day." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Spencer barely slept, subsisting on coffee and pure adrenaline. He watched as Scott Cahill pushed forward with his takeover bid, growing more desperate with each passing hour. Durham Tech's stock continued to fall, but not as sharply as it should have given the dire financial reports. The rumors of a game-changing new product were doing their job, creating just enough uncertainty to keep investors from completely jumping ship. On the fourth day, Spencer received another call from John. "Scott's getting paranoid," John reported. "He suspects there's a leak. He's having IT go through everyone's emails and phone records." Spencer smiled. "Good. Keep your head down. We're almost there." That afternoon, Spencer called a meeting of Durham Tech's board and key investors. The conference room was tense, filled with worried faces and whispered conversations. Spencer stood at the head of the table, surveying the room. These were the people who had believed in him, who had helped build Durham Tech from the ground up. He owed them the truth. "I know you're all concerned," he began. "The past few days have been challenging, to say the least." He paused, making eye contact with each person in the room. "But I'm here to tell you that everything is going according to plan." A murmur ran through the room. Spencer held up a hand for silence. Cahill Tech's takeover attempt was anticipated. In fact, we've been preparing for it for weeks. The financial reports, the stock devaluation, it's all part of a larger strategy. He clicked a button on his laptop, and a series of graphs appeared on the screen behind him. "What you're looking at is the real state of Durham Tech. Our quantum computing project isn't failing. It's weeks ahead of schedule. Our projected earnings? They're conservative estimates at best." The mood in the room began to shift from anxiety to cautious optimism. "I've called you here today because I need your trust," Spencer continued. "What I'm about to share cannot leave this room. But I promise you, if you stand with me now, Durham Tech will not only survive this attack, we'll emerge stronger than ever." For the next hour, Spencer laid out his plan in detail. By the time he finished, the room was buzzing with excitement. The board members and investors left with renewed confidence, ready to weather the storm. As the last person filed out, Danny approached Spencer. "That was one hell of a performance," he said, clapping Spencer on the shoulder. "You think it'll be enough?" Spencer nodded. "It has to be. We're all in now." That night, as Spencer was preparing to finally get some much-needed sleep, his phone buzzed with a text from Ricardo. "Got something you need to see. Le Ciel. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Spencer frowned. Lucille was the most exclusive rooftop restaurant in the city. What could Ricardo have found there? The next evening, Spencer arrived at Lucille promptly at 8. Ricardo was waiting for him at the bar. "What's this about?" Spencer asked as he sat down. Ricardo nodded towards a table near the window. "Take a look, but try not to be obvious about it." Spencer casually glanced in the direction Ricardo had indicated. His blood ran cold. Sitting at the table, looking intimate and carefree, were Kristen and Scott Kale. Spencer's hands clenched into fists. "Their anniversary," he growled. Ricardo nodded. "Thought you want to know." Spencer's mind raced. Part of him wanted to march over there, to confront them, to wipe those smug smiles off their faces. But no, that wasn't the plan. He needed to be smarter than that. He pulled out his phone, dialing Abby's number. "How fast can you get to Lucille?" he asked when she answered. "And how do you feel about creating a scene?" 30 minutes later, Spencer and Abby walked into Lucille arm in arm. They were both dressed impeccably. Spencer in a tailored suit that accentuated his athletic build, Abby in a stunning red dress that turned heads as they passed. They secured a table with a clear view of Kristen and Scott, then settled in to wait. As the main course arrived, Spencer and Abby made their move. They stood up, making their way towards Kristen and Scott's table, as if heading to the restrooms. Kristen saw them first. Her eyes widened in shock, the wine glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. Scott turned to see what had startled Kristen, his face paling as he recognized Spencer. "Well, well," Spencer said, his voice carrying in the sudden hush that had fallen over the restaurant. "Isn't this cozy?" Kristen recovered first. "Spencer," she hissed, "what are you doing here?" "Having dinner," Spencer replied casually, "with my date." He gestured to Abby, who smiled sweetly. "Your date?" Kristen's voice was strangled. "But that's my sister." Scott stood up, trying to defuse the situation. "Look, Spencer, I know this looks bad, but..." "Bad?" Spencer laughed, the sound cold and mirthless. "No, Scott. Bad was when you tried to steal my company's secrets. Bad was when you launched a hostile takeover of my life's work." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. This is just the beginning." Kristen's face was a mask of fury. "How dare you?" she spat. "You show up here with my own sister? You're nothing but a..." "Careful, Kristen." Abby cut in, her voice honey-sweet. "You might not want to finish that sentence. Not when there are so many important people around to hear it." For the first time, Kristen and Scott seemed to realize they had an audience. Several tables around them were occupied by some of the city's most influential tech executives and journalists, all watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. Spencer smiled, a predator's grin. "You two enjoy your dinner," he said. "I'm sure you have a lot to talk about." As he and Abby turned to leave, Spencer paused, looking back at Scott. "Oh, and Scott, you might want to double-check those Durham Tech financials. I have a feeling there might be some discrepancies." They walked away, leaving Kristen and Scott staring after them in stunned silence. As they reached their table, Abby let out a low whistle. "That was intense," she said. "You okay?" Spencer took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Yeah," he said. "I'm better than okay. I'm just getting started." They raised their glasses in a quiet toast, both knowing that the real battle was only beginning. A week after the restaurant incident, Kristen paced nervously in a private room at Scott's club. The past 7 days had been a nightmare. Their carefully constructed plans were unraveling at an alarming rate. The door opened and Scott walked in. He looked haggard, his usual polished appearance marred by dark circles under his eyes and a day's worth of stubble. "This is a disaster," Kristen hissed as soon as the door closed behind him. "Spencer's 3 steps ahead of us at every turn. How did this happen?" Scott ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we need to do something drastic. Now." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. "I've had my team working around the clock. We've fabricated evidence of tax evasion and illegal offshore accounts in Spencer's name." Kristen's eyes widened. "Is that enough?" Scott nodded. "It's enough to ruin him, to force him to step down from Durham Tech to avoid prosecution." Kristen felt a flicker of hope for the first time in days. "And the divorce? If he steps down, agrees to hand over control of Durham Tech, we can offer him a quiet divorce. No scandal, no dragging his name through the mud." Kristen nodded slowly. Do it. Set up a meeting. 2 days later, Spencer walked into a conference room at the Ritz-Carlton. Kristen and Scott were already there, looking tense but determined. Spencer, Scott began as soon as he sat down. We have a proposition for you. Spencer leaned back in his chair, his face impassive. I'm listening. Scott slid the folder across the table. We have evidence of some financial irregularities on your part. Tax evasion, illegal offshore accounts, the kind of thing that could land you in federal prison. Spencer didn't even glance at the folder. Is that so? Kristen leaned forward. We're willing to make this all go away, Spencer. All you have to do is step down from Durham Tech. Hand over control to Scott. And in return, Spencer's voice was eerily calm. A quiet divorce, Kristen said. No scandal. No mudslinging. You walk away with your reputation intact. Spencer was silent for a long moment. Then, to Kristen and Scott's surprise, he smiled. That's a very interesting offer, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small device. But I have a counterproposal. He pressed a button on the device, and suddenly the room was filled with Kristen and Scott's voices, discussing their plans to blackmail Spencer. The color drained from their faces as they realized what was happening. You see, Spencer continued, his voice hardening, I've been recording our conversations for quite some time now. I have evidence of your affair, your corporate espionage, and now your attempted blackmail. He stood up, looming over the table. So here's my offer. You both resign from KL Tech immediately. You admit to your shareholders that you attempted a hostile takeover based on stolen information. And Kristen, you agree to a divorce settlement on my terms. Kristen and Scott stared at him in shocked silence. Or, Spencer continued, I can take this recording, along with all the other evidence I've collected, to the FBI. I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing about your activities. The united front between Kristen and Scott crumbled instantly. You manipulated me. Kristen shrieked at Scott. You said this was foolproof. Scott's face twisted with anger. Me? You're the one who came to me in the first place, looking for a way to secure your financial future, remember? As they turned on each other, Spencer calmly gathered his things and walked to the door. He paused, looking back at the bickering couple. I'll give you 24 hours to make your decision, he said. Choose wisely. As the door closed behind him, Spencer allowed himself a small smile. The game was over, and he had won. Scott Cahill paced his office like a caged animal, his usually immaculate appearance in disarray. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his shirt was rumpled from hours of frantic work. The past few weeks had been a nightmare, each of his carefully laid plans crumbling to dust. He grabbed his phone, dialing Kristen's number for the 5th time that day. Straight to voicemail. Again. Damn it, Kristen, he snarled, hurling the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack. A tentative knock at the door interrupted his brooding. Mr. Cahill, his assistant's voice was hesitant. The board is waiting for you in the conference room. Scott took a deep breath, straightening his tie and smoothing down his hair. He couldn't let them see him like this. He had to be in control. He had to have a plan. As he strode into the conference room, the tension was palpable. The board members sat in stony silence, their faces grim. Gentlemen, Scott began, summoning every ounce of charm and confidence he possessed. I know the past few weeks have been challenging, but I assure you, KL Tech is stronger than ever. Our takeover of Durham Tech is proceeding as planned. The lead board member, a stern-faced man named Harrison, leaned forward. Is that so, Scott? Because from where we're sitting, it looks like we're hemorrhaging money and credibility by the hour. Scott opened his mouth to respond, but Harrison cut him off. Save it. We've heard enough of your assurances. What we need now are results. You have 48 hours to turn this around, or we're pulling the plug on the takeover and reevaluating your position as CEO. The words hit Scott like a physical blow. He nodded stiffly, then turned and left the room without another word. Back in his office, Scott's mind raced. He needed a win, and he needed it now. His eyes fell on a file folder on his desk, one he'd been saving as a last resort. He picked up his phone, the spare he kept in his desk drawer, and dialed a number he'd sworn he'd never use. "It's Cahill," he said when the line connected. "I need everything you've got on Spencer Durham, and I mean everything. I don't care how you get it, just get it done." As he hung up, Scott felt a cold sense of calm settle over him. He was all in now. It was do or die. Across town, Spencer Durham sat in his office, a small smile playing on his lips as he watched the latest financial report scroll across his screen. Cahill Tech's stock was in freefall, and rumors of federal investigations were swirling through the tech world. His phone buzzed. A text from John Turner, his mole in Cahill Tech. "SC making desperate moves. Be ready." Spencer's smile widened. He'd been waiting for this. He picked up his desk phone, dialing a familiar number. "Danny, it's time. Release the dossier." Within hours, the tech world was in an uproar. Leaked documents detailing years of corporate espionage and unethical business practices by Scott Cahill and Cahill Tech were splashed across every major news outlet. Spencer watched from his office as CNBC ran a breaking news banner. Cahill Tech CEO Scott Cahill implicated in massive corporate scandal. His phone rang. It was Abby. "You seeing this?" she asked, a note of awe in her voice. "Oh, I'm seeing it," Spencer replied, his tone satisfied. "You know he's going to come after you with everything he's got now, right?" Abby's voice held a hint of concern. Spencer's laugh was cold. "Let him try. I'm ready." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. Cahill Tech's stock plummeted to record lows as investors scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Key employees, sensing the sinking ship, began jumping en masse to competitors, many of them to Durham Tech, thanks to carefully placed job offers from John Turner. Scott Cahill watched in horror as his empire crumbled around him. His phone rang constantly, board members demanding explanations, lawyers warning of impending lawsuits, reporters hungry for comments. In a final, desperate move, Scott booked a red-eye flight to the Cayman Islands, where he had a secret bank account with enough money to start a new life. He was halfway to the airport when his car was suddenly surrounded by black SUVs. FBI agents swarmed out, weapons drawn. "Scott Cahill," the lead agent announced as Scott was dragged from his car. "You're under arrest for securities fraud, corporate espionage, and attempted flight to avoid prosecution." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Scott's eyes met those of Spencer Durham, who stood watching from the shadows. Spencer's face was impassive, but his eyes held a glint of cold satisfaction. With Scott Cahill's arrest dominating the headlines, Kristen Durham found herself alone and desperate. Her carefully constructed world was falling apart, and she knew she had one last card to play. She filed for divorce, still clinging to the belief that she could claim half of Spencer's assets. It was her right, after all. She'd been by his side as he built Durham Tech. She deserved her share. The first day of the divorce proceedings dawned bright and clear. Kristen strode into the courtroom, head held high, dressed in her most expensive suit. She faltered slightly when she saw Spencer, looking calm and collected at the defendant's table. Her lawyer, a shark in an Armani suit, stood to make their opening statement. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Durham, is entitled to half of all marital assets, including Mr. Durham's shares in Durham Tech." She was a supportive wife who— "Objection, Your Honor," interrupted a voice from Spencer's table. A tall, imposing woman stood up, Jordan Foley, Spencer's attorney. "Before we proceed, we have evidence that directly contradicts Mrs. Durham's claims." The judge nodded. "Proceed, Miss Foley." What followed was a masterclass in legal evisceration. Jordan presented a mountain of evidence. Surveillance photos of Kristen's affair with Scott Cahill, financial records showing her attempts to hide assets, emails detailing her involvement in corporate espionage against Durham Tech. Kristen felt the blood drain from her face as her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. She turned to her lawyer, who looked equally shell-shocked. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Jordan continued, her voice ringing through the stunned courtroom, "we are countersuing Mrs. Durham for damages caused to Durham Tech through her actions." The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. "In light of this evidence, I'm rejecting Mrs. Durham's claim to Durham Tech assets. Moreover, I'm ordering Mrs. Durham to pay damages for her role in corporate espionage. She will retain only her personal belongings and a small alimony, as determined by the court." Kristen stumbled out of the courtroom, her mind reeling. How had it come to this? How had Spencer outmaneuvered her so completely? As she pushed through the crowd of reporters outside the courthouse, she caught sight of Spencer talking quietly with his lawyer. For a moment, their eyes met. Kristen saw no triumph in Spencer's gaze, no gloating, just a cold, implacable resolve that chilled her to her core. She turned away, suddenly understanding the magnitude of her mistake. She had underestimated Spencer, had thought him weak, easily manipulated. Now she was paying the price. Months passed. The tech world slowly recovered from the Cahill Tech scandal, with Durham Tech emerging as a dominant force in the industry. Spencer threw himself into his work, pushing the boundaries of quantum computing and artificial intelligence. One afternoon, as Spencer sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Mr. Durham?" a hesitant voice said when he answered. "This is Sarah from Pinewood Rehabilitation Center. I'm calling about Kristen Durham. She's asked to speak with you." Spencer's hand tightened on the phone. He hadn't heard from Kristen since the divorce. He knew she'd checked into rehab as part of a plea deal to avoid jail time for her role in the corporate espionage. "What does she want?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "She says she wants to make amends," Sarah replied. "She's been making good progress in her treatment, and this is part of her recovery process." Spencer was silent for a long moment. Part of him wanted to refuse, to hang up and never think about Kristen again. But another part, a part he thought he'd buried, was curious. "All right," he said finally. "Tell her I'll meet her, but not at the rehab center. There's a cafe called the Blue Door. I'll be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. The next day, Spencer arrived at the Blue Door precisely at 2. He chose a table in the back where they wouldn't be easily overheard. Kristen walked in a few minutes later. Spencer almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes. This Kristen looked softer somehow, more real. She hesitated when she saw him, then squared her shoulders and walked over. "Spencer," she said softly, "thank you for agreeing to meet me." Spencer nodded, gesturing for her to sit. "You wanted to talk, so talk." Kristen took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. Several. Actually, what I did to you, to us, it was unforgivable." Spencer said nothing, his face impassive. "I've been doing a lot of thinking in rehab," Kristen continued. "A lot of soul-searching. And I realized I was scared. Scared of losing the lifestyle I'd become accustomed to. Scared of being left behind as you became more and more successful." She laughed bitterly. "Pretty ironic, considering I ended up losing everything anyway." "Why are you telling me this, Kristen?" Spencer asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Because I need you to know that I understand now. I understand the pain I caused, the trust one betrayed, and I'm truly, deeply sorry." Kristen's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Spencer. I know I don't deserve that. I needed you to know." Spencer was silent for a long moment, studying Kristen's face. He saw genuine remorse there, a far cry from the cold, calculating woman he divorced. "I appreciate you telling me this," he said finally. "I can't forgive you, Kristen. Not now, maybe not ever. But I hope you find peace." Kristen nodded, wiping away a tear. "Thank you, Spencer, for everything." As they stood to leave, Spencer felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd carried the anger and betrayal for so long. It had become a part of him. But now, facing Kristen's genuine remorse, he felt something he hadn't expected. Release. They parted ways outside the cafe, likely for the last time. As Spencer watched Kristen walk away, he felt a sense of closure wash over him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Abby. "Dinner tonight? That new Thai place on Fifth." Spencer smiled, feeling lighter than he had in months. He typed out a quick reply. "Sounds perfect. See you at 7. As he walked to his car, Spencer reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He'd faced betrayal, fought against seemingly insurmountable odds, and emerged stronger. And now, as he looked to the future, he felt a spark of excitement. That evening, as Spencer sat across from Abby in the cozy Thai restaurant, he found himself laughing genuinely for the first time in what felt like years. They talked about everything and nothing: work, family, their shared love of obscure sci-fi novels. As he watched Abby's eyes light up while she recounted a funny story about her latest art project, Spencer felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the spicy curry in front of him. He realized then that sometimes, from the ashes of betrayal, something new and potentially beautiful could emerge. And for the first time in a long time, Spencer Durham looked to the future with hope.